English teachers, what topic on a write about anything essay made you lose hope in humanity? I was teaching a University 101 class, study habits, how to write essays, time management, how to get by at college for kids who honestly aren't really ready for college. The assignment, one paragraph about something that interests you. One of those essays read, I am interested in blueberry muffin, like how they round on the top and ripped on the sides. That what I like. I kept that on my fridge for a year. I too am interested in blueberry muffin. I had a poetry unit my first year of teaching. Learned very quickly that they couldn't write about anything but teenage love. God, I read so much bad love poetry that year. Former English adjunct here. One time a student wrote about a first date that went horribly wrong, including running over a cat and having it stuck to his truck tires, and then vomiting at dinner. Another one that stands out wasn't a topic, but an assigned research paper. A student maintained that she didn't need sources, because God told her the information. She actually cited God as a personal interview in correct MLA format. Student here. My friend and I were sitting secondary school English and we had to write about a crisis for an end of year creative writing test. He decided to write about how he was in a crisis of failing this test due to us having a week full of non-stop exams all filled with technical difficulties and mistakes prior to this exam. For him this test was the final straw and he spent the hour ranting about how much he hated this test and how he was going to fail. He passed with flying colors and a note from our teacher to be a little more appropriate and less on the nose next time. My HS English teacher had to state, due to a submission the year before, that writing about your foot fetish and pleasuring yourself with your feet would not be read or graded. I was in a film class and the professor also had to clarify, due to events of last semester, submitting pornography of any kind, even with all parties consenting, for a film project will constitute an automatic failure on the assignment. Two stand out. First one, the prompt was if you could go back and change one thing from your life, what would it be? A young man wrote about the night his abusive alcoholic dad came home. Apparently from the story, dad came home this way often. The fateful night he wanted to change was the first time he stood up to his dad. Dad came home, kid defended his mom and dad in a drunken rage left. Dad got into a head-on collision and died. Kid totally blamed himself for his father's death. Second story, the prompt was create a holiday and what the traditions and customs of the holiday were. A student created National Black People Day. I was like, okay, how are you going to celebrate it? She said by killing white people. I was like, what? She said, yeah, once a year we can kill as many white people as we want. I got the counselor involved in both of them. What the frick? Not a teacher but stepfather. Daughter was a HS kid wrote a report about weather cut and paste from the internet. The language varied in writing style and grade level from paragraph to paragraph. I offered that rewriting in her own language was the minimum she could do to avoid making it obvious she plagiarized. She decided elementary school level was her style and chose to rewrite the college level paragraphs. When she thought an acceptable substitution of cloud depression was the weather is sad, I just gave up. I would be pretty dang disappointed too. Not an essay but we were doing impromptu speeches and one guy recited the Weird Al song Albuquerque word for word until the teacher finally told him to stop after 10 minutes. Our English teacher told us that some guy copied an article from the Italian Wikipedia thinking it was in English. A Catholic high school in my hometown asked for students to write about what they would do if there were no laws or lack of morals. This was inspired by the purge, which had been discussed in ethics class. 12 students were suspended indefinitely, 2 or 3 ended up expelled, the others returned eventually, for what they wrote, ranging from data pay to human trafficking to mass shootings. Even though the assignment made it more than obvious that it was a fictional assignment and by relating it to the purge pretty much goaded students into matching the level of lawlessness. Made national news. There were articles by psychologists for days. They even mentioned the Reddit AskReddit thread and the psychologists' response to not create a feedback forum. Not a single article even came close to suggesting that if you give 17 to 19-year-olds an opening to go against good taste, that most of them would do so for shoots and giggles. 2 students, the data pay one and the mass shooting one, did not find another school and did not graduate, or at least had to redo their last year. Not a teacher, but I used to tutor middle schoolers and lower class men. Just graduated in HS. A kid wrote an essay about cavemen using hieroglyphics to communicate how they'd fight the dinosaurs. Essay was write about an early human civilization and compare and contrast their way of life to ours. This kid was in AP World History, effectively a college level class, and didn't understand that there was around 63 million years separating dinosaurs and the first Homo sapiens civilizations. He then told me that I was incorrect and posed the question, if dinosaurs were dead, then how did people ride them? I was truly baffled by that. This, an incident where a guy threatened to scoop my nuts like they were ace nuts, a girl who didn't understand that countries that exist now didn't always exist, and a guy who couldn't understand how supply and demand works simply because he would just go out hunting if food gets too expensive, is why I stopped tutoring history and economics. I took an SAT preparation course one summer which would teach you a variety of tricks and tips for doing better, as well as practicing taking tests. Amidst telling us tips for the essay portion, they explained how the grading system worked and that you need to be slightly careful, because if the people grading it feel they cannot be objective about it, then you'll just get a 0. They cited a story where once the essay topic was "we have no fate but what we make for ourselves," which many of you might recognize. You were to discuss why or why not it was true. One student wrote an essay on how it was true, and went on to describe that the Holocaust was the Jews' own fault for his supporting evidence. Needless to say, he received a 0 because none of the graders could read it objectively. I teach literature at a college and mostly deal with freshmen and sophomores. For our free writing unit, one of the assignments asked the students to write any original story based on your favorite fictional genre. So, one of my students wanted to do horror. I said great, that's also a favorite of mine. Go nuts. Eventually, the assignments are turned in and I'm grading them at home. I get to the kid with the horror story and it's about a serial killer who stalks women. Okay, whatever, nothing I haven't seen before. But then the story goes into long, excruciating detail about the next victim this killer plans on stalking, upping, murdering. A petite blonde in her early 30s who teaches English. And it just so happens I'm a petite blonde in her early 30s who, well, yeah, I didn't report it or anything since it was a creative exercise. I didn't grade him unfairly, either. But I seriously couldn't look that kid in the eye ever again. If there was something to make me start looking over my shoulder, this would be it. Until last year, my students, 7th grade, ages 12-13, had to do a science fair project. They had to create a topic with a testable theory. Does brand X detergent get more stains out than brand Y? This was accompanied with a research report of the topic. I would give the students a sample report I created. Every year, I would tell them not to copy from their sources, and I would easily find out who did. Every year, some literally copy word for word from, of the easiest of sources, Wikipedia. Cue mad parents. Cue exact copies of the report, side by side with the highlighted portions of the report. In high school, we had a history essay to write about JFK and one of my classmates wrote the entire essay by naming him Jean-Francois Kennedy. Yes, it was in France. My teacher was so astonished by it, he asked her why she didn't wrote the abbreviation JFK instead of guessing the name, and she answered that she actually thought his name was Jean-Francois Kennedy. Not a teacher, but in 3rd grade I moved to a new school. I was in a Montessori before. The new school was a Catholic school. I was a Unitarian Universalist, and we always called our preacher Reverend, not Father. In my new school, the school priest, Father Jim, was retiring and we had to write a short essay about how much we'll miss him. This was like, I dunno, the 3rd day of school. I had no freaking clue what the heck a Father Jim was, and since nobody bothered to write out his full name I assumed this school just had a weird name for the gym. So of course, I wrote an essay about how much I'll miss the gym, and how terrible it's gonna be that I can't run all over it or play football in it anymore, and how terrible it is that the gym is retired. I ended the essay wishing the gym well with its new tires. The teacher was not amused. Not an English teacher, just a mother reading over her 10th grader son's essay 2 weeks ago. He had written something to the effect of, heaps of people have heaps of hobbies. So we had a conversation about using more academic language and employing a wider range of vocabulary. I come back 10 minutes later and he'd used the thesaurus function in Word, so it now read, Piles of people have mounds of hobbies. Just, whoa. You son is either dumb or brilliant. We had to write short stories in high school English. My best friend was struggling for inspiration, so me, self-absorbed teenager, told her to write about me when I'm a beautiful successful professional ballerina. She took the idea and ran with it, but took a dark turn and had me arped backstage by the director of the ballet company. She showed it to me proudly before class, and when she saw my face as I read it, started backpedaling hard about how it definitely wasn't about me. She just got inspired. Was a substitute teacher in grad school and was filling in for an older English teacher. Students were to hand in their free write essays and then to read. Some kid wrote a straight up child pornography story. He stared at me like a deer in headlights while I was reading them while they were reading. I made it one page and then I WhatsApped the department head who took the student after the class. So yeah, that was the worst. 4th grade, I was teaching the kids how to write short stories. Kid wrote a story about going to a new school for the first day and being abused by teachers. It was awful. Turns out this kid was being abused by his dad and thought it was normal behavior for adults to act that way. Absolutely heartbreaking. Not a teacher. In high school we got told to write a short horror story. Someone googled short horror story, printed it out and handed it in. He literally just took a screenshot and printed it so you could see the URL and what he was watching on YouTube. Spoiler, he didn't pass. I'm impressed he reached the level of print screen. To this day I see posts where people captured the screen with their phones. It wasn't write about anything, it was more like create a story. My student, 9 years old, female, wrote about 2 best friends. They were at the mall when one of them got kidnapped by a villain, who put her in a suitcase and took her to London. Everyone searched for her and she was found dead. The villain had murdered her. The police arrested and imprisoned him for 10 years and then killed him. The girl's best friend was really sad and killed herself, and then they lived happy ever after. She is 9, and wrote about kidnap, murder, police violence and suicide, and romanticized suicide. My girlfriend and her sister have some pretty daft assignments. The GF got asked to write a paper on any aspect of history, so just wrote about her life up until that point. Her sister got asked to do a presentation on evolution and did it on the 2001 film. Not a teacher either, but I remember I had to read over a classmate's essay and he wrote about a bunch of Disney princesses going to jail on Alcatraz. Man, the competition for the prisoner with a bunch of bird friends would be fierce. I've had classmates submit essays copied straight up from Wikipedia, including the blue hyperlinks and all. I had a classmate in high school who once did a presentation where he just read his text off a piece of paper. The presentation included the phrase, "As a historian, I..." Here's one I can actually answer. I was teaching an IELTS test prep class to high school aged students in China. One of my students is planning on being a nutritionist, and when I gave her a topic about what she would change if she could be the president for a day, she said that she would imprison everyone who was over a certain BMI until they were thin, and if they were repeat offenders they should spend life in prison for wasting public resources and making healthcare more expensive for everyone else. When I was in high school, mid-90s, they started pushing free writing assignments in every class, including classes like band, art, and math. By free writing I don't mean that the teacher would give us a writing assignment relevant to the class. The principal would literally get on the PA system at a particular time and announce that it was time for the writing exercise, and then we would have like 30 minutes to write whatever the heck we felt like. The assignment wasn't even really graded on anything besides participation. We always knew ahead of time what class period it would happen in, and my friend and I thought the entire concept was freaking stupid, so we would grab a dictionary, flip open to a random page, and randomly pick a word that we had to include in our essay. We'd have a contest to see who could use that word the most times in their essay, and the only rule was that it had to make sense in the context of whatever we wrote. I remember writing an entire story using the word fraxinella. It's a type of plant. I don't remember a single detail about it, but I managed to work it into my completely ridiculous story about 10 times. Another time we picked cyborg, which was pretty easy to do, but to make more ridiculous I decided to make it a time-traveling cyborg fraxinella plant. When a 16-year-old male student wrote about the fine world of webcamming and how easy it is to make a lot of money off attention-hungry old people. I wrote an essay in 4th grade about people were all stupid and how much I hated my stupid life. The teacher gave me a B+ and said nothing more about it. Must have supplied good evidence. A student in my class right now is writing a paper about buying sperm online, so probably that. I was at I once had to read a 5-page Spider P fic when we asked for a creative writing short story assignment. It was supposed to be an assignment imagining if humans reproduced in another manner how life would be different. Not about the reproduction but about human social structure. English tutor here. I had a student in high school who was really struggling with the writing prompts I was giving him. He was studying hybrid genres in school and how to write a hybrid genre short story. So I basically gave him a long list of genres, told him to pick any 2 he wanted and combine them to write a story. He didn't get it. He emailed me asking for clarification, like which topic do I choose here, and I told him he could be as creative as he liked. Pick horror and sci-fi, pick mystery and crime, pick romance and mystery, whatever strikes your fancy. I literally could not have given him an easier prompt. Then he asks me to give him some examples of hybrid genre stories, so he has an idea of what to write. So I emailed him a list of famous hybrid genre books. For example, The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, Gun with occasional music by Jonathan Lethem, Harry Potter, etc. This kid basically latched onto Harry Potter and rewrote the sorting ceremony from Philosopher's Stone, word for word. There was no orientation, no info about his main characters, who were coincidentally also called Harry, Ron and Hermione, no complication, no climax, no resolution. It was literally just an incomplete retelling of the sorting hat ceremony from the first book. Not only did this kid fail to think of a single creative story idea, he plagiarized one of the most famous books of all time and was daft enough to think I wouldn't notice. It really made me despair. Not a teacher, but a few months ago I did this biology thing in which we could choose between several topics and do research on them. I chose fish's respiratory systems. From there I could choose exactly what to do, and I decided that a title would be, Would the fish smoke through their gills or through their mouths? A deep analysis of the gill respiratory system. It was a 4-page work and the professor liked it so much that he asked my permission to publish it in the local newspaper. It was freaking hilarious going to the local store and finding it in the first page. This guy wrote me a paper about how swamp butt ruined his marriage, describing it initially as an unexpected rash. He wrote at length about how this rash caused his wife to stop having intercourse with him and refuse him any intimacy. After some time, he and his wife got a divorce, and he promptly blames the rash for it. It isn't much later in the paper, at this point a good 6 pages long, that he details his struggles with proper hygiene due to cheap toilet paper causing this rash. So, because this guy couldn't wipe his butt properly, he lost his wife, his kids, and his sanity, to the point where he decided to come tell me about it. My second place is probably the guy who wrote about how he got AIDS. Not a teacher, but my classmate once wrote a solution essay titled Why Do Black People Steal Bikes? And How to Stop It. One of the solutions included spray painting black people white. I wish I was making this up. Like this video and this good boy will play you a nice song. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.